Let's get one thing straight. Toxic people aren't just annoying. They are destructive. To your peace, to your power, to your potential. And if you're not careful, they will twist your identity into something small, reactive, and insecure. But that's not who you are. You're here because you refuse to live at the mercy of someone else's dysfunction. You're not going to yell to be heard. You're not going to beg to be respected. You're not going to shrink to keep the peace. Because high-value women do not dance with chaos. They walk through it, untouched. This isn't about being cold or hard. It's about being unshakably clear on who you are and ruthlessly intentional about who gets access to you. Toxic people want your attention. They want your emotional reaction. They want you tangled up in their drama, their story, their need to feel powerful. You're going to learn how to give them nothing. You're going to learn how to respond, not react. How to walk away, not engage. How to disarm without raising your voice. By the end of this, you will know exactly how high-value women handle toxic people. Not with noise, not with revenge, but with mastery. This isn't just self-help. This is self-respect. And today, we draw the line. A high-value woman is not a trend. She is not built on aesthetics, status, or validation. You don't become her by changing your clothes, getting a promotion, or collecting attention. You become her by doing the inner work, by healing what you've been avoiding, by owning your worth without waiting for someone else to co-sign it, and by deciding that peace is more important than popularity. She is not easily moved, not because she is numb or hardened, but because she knows the cost of letting her emotions be controlled by people who haven't earned her trust. She's been there before, over-explaining herself to people committed to misunderstanding her, trying to prove her value in spaces where it was never going to be seen, giving more than she received until she was emotionally bankrupt. She doesn't do that anymore. Her power lies in her emotional discipline. She doesn't chase. She doesn't beg. She doesn't try to fix broken people or teach grown adults how to respect her. Why? Because she understands this core truth. You cannot force someone to value what they were never raised to recognize. She does not waste energy convincing someone to treat her well. She observes. She listens. She sets boundaries early and with conviction. If someone disrespects her once, she watches. If it happens again, she distances. If it becomes a pattern, she disappears. She doesn't explain her exit. She doesn't deliver speeches. She leaves, quietly, permanently, because she knows her absence speaks louder than any reaction ever could. What makes her high value isn't perfection. It's awareness. She knows her patterns, her weaknesses, her triggers. She doesn't hide from them. She meets them head on. She's done the kind of healing that isn't cute or Instagram-worthy, the kind that means confronting uncomfortable truths about how she once showed up, how she tolerated less, and how she participated in her own pain. That work gave her strength, not bitterness, clarity, not cynicism. And no, she's not intimidating. That's just what unhealed people say when they meet someone who refuses to shrink for their comfort. She's not cold either. She's actually warm, deeply empathetic, generous with her energy, but only when it's safe to be. She gives the best of herself to the people who show up with consistency, respect, and truth. Everyone else gets boundaries. She's not loud. Her power doesn't need volume. She can sit in a room, speak only once, and people will remember her. Why? Because she carries herself with intention. She doesn't say yes out of guilt or no out of fear. Every word, every action, every presence, measured, controlled. She knows that being high value has nothing to do with how others see you, and everything to do with how you see yourself when no one's watching. She's not desperate for connection. She enjoys solitude. She knows how to be alone, without being lonely. That's the difference between someone who settles and someone who chooses. A high-value woman chooses. Carefully. Strategically. She'd rather wait alone than waste time in chaos, hoping someone might change. You can't manipulate her with silence. She's made peace with quiet. You can't guilt her into staying. She doesn't respond to emotional blackmail. You can't bait her into drama. She's trained in composure. Her responses are rooted in choice, not emotion. And that right there is her superpower. She doesn't punish, she doesn't belittle, she doesn't control. Because she doesn't need to, her energy is the message. If she doesn't like how you show up, she simply stops making space for you. And when she removes herself, the entire dynamic shifts. She's not about revenge. That's low vibration. She's about elevation. She's so focused on growth, purpose, and expansion that toxic people can't even find a place in her life anymore. Not because she hates them, but because they simply don't match her frequency. She's not afraid to walk alone, because she knows what it feels like to walk with people who never had her back. She's not afraid to speak up, because she's no longer willing to betray her truth just to be accepted. And she's not afraid to lose people, because she'd rather lose others than lose herself. You'll find her in every room, but never desperate to be seen. You'll hear her speak, but never just to fill silence. She doesn't perform, she doesn't overextend, she just is, centered, grounded, intentional. That's the woman toxic people can't handle. That's the woman who doesn't fall for manipulation. That's the woman who leads with presence, not fear. She is high value because she lives by this truth. I am the standard. I don't chase respect. I require it. And if you can't offer it, she'll simply let you go. Without noise, without hate, without looking back. Emotional intelligence is her silent strength. It's what keeps her centered when everything around her is designed to pull her out of character. A high-value woman doesn't just know how to feel. She knows how to manage what she feels. That's the difference between reacting from pain and responding from power. Where most people allow their emotions to control them, she has mastered the art of control without suppression. She doesn't avoid her emotions, she understands them. She sits with them, sorts through them, and decides which ones are worth acting on. Toxic people are emotional predators. They feed off chaos, conflict, and confusion. They want a reaction, not a resolution. And most people give them exactly that, a reaction. Anger, tears, pleading, silence that screams. But not her. She doesn't give them the satisfaction. She knows how to pause, breathe, evaluate. She steps back when most people lean in. She watches, she studies, she listens, not just to words, but to patterns, tone, energy. She understands that people reveal themselves when you give them the space to speak. So she lets them talk. She lets them unravel. She doesn't interrupt. She doesn't defend. She just listens, because she knows that the truth always reveals itself, especially in silence. This emotional detachment isn't coldness. It's discipline. It's wisdom earned through experience. She's felt the sting of betrayal. She's been talked down to, manipulated, gaslighted. And once, maybe, she took the bait. She argued with people who never cared about understanding her. She over-explained herself to those who were committed to distorting her. She tried to prove her worth to people who were already committed to misunderstanding her. But she's not that woman anymore. Now she understands this. If someone can control your emotions, they control you. That's the game toxic people play. They poke, they provoke, they test your limits just to see if they can get a rise out of you. And when you explode, they win. When you lose your calm, they feel powerful. But she refuses to give away that kind of power. Her emotions are hers, and no one gets to hijack them. She knows the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is instant. It's emotional. It's driven by ego. Responding is thoughtful. It's deliberate. It's rooted in awareness, not impulse. She takes the time to understand what she's feeling and why. Is it anger, or is it hurt? Is it betrayal, or is it a repeated wound from something unhealed? She doesn't just feel, she analyzes her own emotional data. That's emotional intelligence, and that's why toxic people can't get to her. They want to guilt trip her. She doesn't flinch. They want to make her feel like the problem. She calmly hands back the projection. They want to turn every issue into a storm, every disagreement into a disaster. But she doesn't dance in dysfunction anymore. She disengages with grace. She doesn't yell. She doesn't accuse. She simply says, "This isn't working for me," and removes herself. That level of calm unnerves people who are used to controlling others through emotional pressure. It confuses them because most people fight back. But she doesn't fight unnecessary battles. She doesn't need to be right. She needs to be free. She needs to be at peace. She doesn't confuse noise with strength or chaos with intensity. She's walked through too much to be impressed by that anymore. She communicates with clarity. She sets boundaries with no explanation. I'm not available for this conversation. This doesn't feel respectful. I'm stepping away from this dynamic. That's it. No long texts, no dramatic exits, no hoping the other person understands. She doesn't need them to understand. She needs to protect her peace. Her emotional intelligence gives her the patience to observe someone's behavior over time, not just how they treat her, but how they treat people who can't do anything for them, how they react when told no, how they behave when no one's watching. She knows that people don't just tell you who they are, they show you, and she pays attention. She also knows when her ego is speaking. When she's tempted to respond just to prove a point or deliver a clever jab, she checks herself. She asks, does this serve me? Or does this feed my ego? She knows that not everything deserves her energy. Not everyone deserves her reaction. Some things are better left unanswered. Some people are better left blocked. Her silence is not weakness, it's strategy. Her power is in how she maintains her composure in the face of disrespect, and how she refuses to let other people dictate how she shows up. She doesn't match energy, she sets it. She leads the emotional tone of her life, and she refuses to let toxic people set the tempo. She's not here to be emotionally available to anyone who demands it. She chooses who gets access to her mind, her feelings, her softness. That access is earned through respect and consistency, not manipulation or urgency. This emotional intelligence is her armor, but it's also her compass. It helps her navigate difficult conversations. It gives her the strength to say no without guilt. It allows her to walk away without needing closure. She doesn't need to win the argument. She wins by protecting her peace, staying aligned with her values, and refusing to be pulled into emotional games. Because at the end of the day, the woman who controls her emotions controls her reality. And that is exactly why the high-value woman is untouchable. She doesn't shout her boundaries from rooftops. She doesn't need to. A high-value woman sets boundaries the same way she carries herself, with clarity, calm, and conviction. There's no drama, no over-explaining, no guilt-ridden justifications. Just a firm understanding of what she will and will not accept. And if you cross the line, she won't yell about it. She'll just stop giving you access. Because for her, boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about honoring herself. She knows where her emotional, mental, and physical limits are, and she doesn't let anyone, no matter how charming, persuasive, or familiar, violate them. Not because she's rigid or unkind, but because she knows what happens when she doesn't protect herself. She's been there, exhausted, resentful, stretched thin from constantly accommodating people who didn't reciprocate, and she made a decision: never again. Boundaries aren't walls for her. They are doors. She decides who gets to come in, who stays out, and who only gets to knock. And the criteria are not up for discussion. If someone makes her feel small, unsafe, or emotionally drained, she doesn't sit down to debate it. She simply moves differently. She becomes unavailable. She adjusts the access. That's her language. And the beauty is, she doesn't need to announce it. Her energy shifts, and anyone paying attention feels it. She doesn't say yes when she means no. She doesn't smile through disrespect. She doesn't tolerate passive aggression or emotional manipulation. If something feels off, she names it. If something hurts, she acknowledges it, not with rage, not with passive silence, but with truth. This doesn't work for me. I'm not comfortable with that. I need space. That's all it takes. She speaks with authority, not because she's aggressive, but because she's aligned. What makes her different is the way she delivers her boundaries. She's not defensive. She doesn't bark them out of fear or insecurity. She's composed. She knows that real power doesn't need to prove itself. It simply exists. When she says no, she doesn't wait for approval. She doesn't waver because someone looks disappointed. She understands that someone else's reaction to her boundary is not her responsibility. Her only responsibility is to protect her energy and maintain her standards. She doesn't confuse being liked with being respected. That's a lesson she learned the hard way. She knows people will call you difficult when you stop being easy to manipulate. They'll say you've changed when you stop accepting less. They'll test your limits just to see if you'll fold. But she doesn't bend for validation anymore. She's not here to be agreeable. She's here to be authentic. In relationships, she doesn't let love blind her to patterns. If someone consistently ignores her needs or crosses emotional lines, she doesn't wait for them to wake up. She lets go. Love for her is not a reason to abandon self-respect. She doesn't chase apologies. She watches behavior. If the pattern doesn't change, the access gets revoked. No second chances just because the history is long or the words sound pretty. At work, she doesn't take on more just to be seen as a team player. She knows her capacity, and she respects it. If she's overwhelmed, she says so. If a colleague speaks over her or disrespects her contribution, she addresses it, professionally, directly, and without fear. She doesn't shrink to make others comfortable. She stands her ground because she knows that dignity doesn't survive in silence. With friends and family, she doesn't let loyalty become bondage. If someone continuously disrespects her time, her values, or her boundaries, she doesn't use blood or history as an excuse. She addresses the issue. And if the behavior continues, she steps back. She's not bitter, she's just evolved. She's realized that protecting her peace sometimes means disappointing others, and that's a price she's willing to pay. There's no guilt in her boundaries because they are rooted in self-awareness. She knows her worth, she knows her needs, and she's no longer afraid to protect either. She doesn't worry about being labeled too much or too sensitive. She'd rather be misunderstood than mistreated. What's powerful is that her boundaries are consistent. She doesn't set them only when she's angry or pushed to the edge. They're not threats, they're standards. They are always active, always present, and that consistency is what makes her unshakable. People know what to expect. There are no mixed signals, no gray zones. You either show up with respect or you lose access. She doesn't hold grudges. She holds the line. She understands that boundaries aren't about punishment. They're about self-preservation. They are the quiet, powerful expression of self-worth. And she doesn't apologize for having them. Because a high-value woman knows this. Every time she lets something slide, she teaches someone how to treat her. And she refuses to be a lesson in tolerance for mistreatment. She is not angry. She is not bitter. She is just done. Done over giving. Done over explaining. Done negotiating with people who benefit from her lack of boundaries. So now she sets them clearly, calmly, and without apology. Because her peace is not up for debate. She's no longer in the business of taking things personally. That's one of the sharpest tools in her emotional arsenal. A high-value woman knows that how people treat her is a reflection of them, not her. Their behavior, their words, their projections, none of it defines who she is. She has done the work to separate her identity from the opinions of those who are unqualified to speak on her worth. There was a time when she didn't know the difference, when someone ignored her, criticized her, dismissed her, or mistreated her. She used to turn it inward. She'd ask herself what she did wrong. Was she not good enough? Too much? Not enough? Should she have said something differently? Should she have tried harder to be understood or liked? That version of her would twist herself into emotional knots, trying to decode someone else's dysfunction, thinking maybe, just maybe, she was the problem. But that woman is gone now. Now she understands this. Broken people break others. People who are emotionally unstable, manipulative, insecure, or wounded don't see you as you are. They see you through the lens of their own pain. And instead of healing, they deflect, they attack, they lie, they project. That isn't about her. That's about what's unresolved in them. So instead of absorbing their behavior, she observes it. She detaches from it emotionally. She sees it for what it is, a desperate attempt to pull her into a place of chaos where they feel most comfortable. She doesn't fall for it, because she's not here to be anyone's emotional punching bag or rehabilitation project. Her worth is not dependent on whether someone else can see it, and her self-image no longer shifts with every external opinion. She has built a deep, grounded relationship with herself, one that doesn't get rattled by every insult, rejection, or emotional withdrawal. When someone criticizes her unfairly, she doesn't collapse. She assesses. Is this feedback or is this projection? Is this person speaking from clarity or from their own unhealed mess? If it's the latter, she discards it immediately. She doesn't carry emotional baggage that doesn't belong to her. She doesn't waste hours rehashing conversations in her head, wondering if she's the villain in someone's broken narrative. She has better things to do than manage the emotions of people who refuse to manage their own. This detachment isn't cold, it's protective, it's smart, because she knows that internalizing toxic behavior only leads to self-doubt, bitterness, and burnout. She doesn't allow broken people to rewrite her story in their language. If someone can't meet her with respect, truth, and maturity, she doesn't plead for understanding. She moves on. This level of clarity wasn't given to her. It was earned through betrayal, disappointment, manipulation, and heartbreak. She had to unlearn the belief that if someone was unhappy with her, she must have done something wrong. She had to stop blaming herself for other people's inability to love, communicate, or show up. And that's when she realized something liberating. It's not her job to carry the weight of someone else's wounds. She no longer seeks closure from broken people because she knows they can't give it. They can't give her what they don't have. Emotional maturity, accountability, empathy. That's why she stopped waiting for explanations. She doesn't need someone to admit they were wrong to know that she was right to walk away. When someone ghosts her, she doesn't chase. When someone disrespects her, she doesn't argue. When someone tries to guilt trip her, she doesn't spiral. She understands that emotionally immature people thrive on reaction, and the most powerful thing she can do is deny them one. That silence, that lack of emotional engagement, that unwavering self-control, it speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. And she's not trying to fix anyone. She's let go of that fantasy. She used to think that if she loved hard enough, showed up consistently enough, or explained clearly enough, maybe the broken person would heal. But she knows now, healing is a personal responsibility. She can be compassionate, but she won't be a casualty. She can be kind, but she won't be manipulated. There's a difference between helping and sacrificing your own mental health. She won't cross that line again. Now, when someone disrespects her, betrays her, or lies to her, she doesn't ask, "What's wrong with me?" She asks, "What does this reveal about them?" And then she makes her decisions accordingly. She doesn't need revenge. She needs distance. She doesn't wish harm. She simply wishes healing from afar. She's not interested in convincing anyone of her value anymore. If someone doesn't see it, that's their limitation, not hers. She knows who she is. She's done the inner work. And that self-knowing is what makes her untouchable to emotionally volatile, manipulative, or broken people. They simply have no place in her world. Because the high-value woman refuses to internalize the dysfunction of others. She understands it, she recognizes it, and then, with grace and finality, she releases it. She doesn't make a scene. She doesn't send one last text filled with everything she wishes they'd understand. She doesn't try to change their mind or beg them to do better. When a high-value woman walks away, she does it with quiet conviction, no drama, no second-guessing, just a powerful, permanent decision rooted in deep self-respect. Because for her, walking away isn't about giving up, it's about choosing herself. She's not interested in staying somewhere just because she invested time, energy, or emotions. She's done romanticizing potential. She doesn't cling to memories or fall in love with what could be, if only they would change. She sees what is, and that's enough. If someone disrespects her, lies to her, manipulates her, or makes her question her worth, she knows the door is right there, and she uses it. She walks away not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. She's felt the ache of leaving someone behind. She's cried in silence over relationships she once thought would last forever. She's grieved the people who couldn't love her the way she needed. But pain doesn't paralyze her. It sharpens her. It reminds her of the cost of staying in places that shrink her. It pushes her to choose peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and dignity over dysfunction. This strength wasn't born overnight. She became this woman through every time she stayed too long, forgave too quickly, and believed too deeply in someone who never showed up for her. She learned the hard way that loyalty without boundaries leads to self-betrayal. That love without self-respect is not love, it's attachment. And now she refuses to betray herself just to keep someone else comfortable. She walks away without slamming the door, but she locks it behind her. Because she knows that broken people often circle back, not because they've changed, but because they've lost access. And she's no longer handing out second chances just because someone feels regret. Regret is not accountability. An apology is not transformation. She doesn't need to hear "I'm sorry" to heal. She doesn't wait for closure from the person who broke her. She creates her own. She doesn't seek validation from the same place that wounded her. She validates herself. Her exit is not a cry for attention. It's not a tactic to get someone to chase her. It's the final move of someone who knows her worth and refuses to argue for it anymore. She leaves when the respect fades, when the energy changes, when the words no longer align with the actions. She doesn't wait for the disrespect to escalate. She doesn't ignore the red flags just because the history is long. The moment her peace feels compromised, she listens. She trusts her intuition over empty promises. And if someone shows her who they are, she doesn't keep asking for clarification. She walks away from relationships, friendships, jobs, anything that requires her to abandon herself in order to stay. She refuses to negotiate her values. She refuses to shrink herself to fit in someone else's comfort zone. And she refuses to keep pouring into connections that only drain her. She's not afraid of being alone. Solitude doesn't scare her anymore. She's built a life she loves with or without someone else in it. She doesn't chase validation, attention, or affection. She doesn't need someone to complete her. She is already whole, and that wholeness is what gives her the power to walk away without looking back. She understands that not every ending needs an audience. Not every goodbye requires an explanation. Some exits are sacred, quiet, intentional. She doesn't perform her pain or parade her strength. She simply chooses herself, and that choice speaks volumes. She no longer explains to people why she left. If they didn't understand her boundaries when she was present, they don't deserve an explanation for her absence. Her silence is not weakness, it's wisdom, it's peace, it's a refusal to participate in emotional games or cyclical dysfunction. She lets go with grace. She doesn't badmouth, she doesn't retaliate, she doesn't hope they suffer without her. She just lets them feel the weight of her absence, the calm that replaces the chaos when she's no longer available to be mistreated or undervalued. And when she walks away, it's not just physical, it's emotional, mental, spiritual. She disconnects completely. She doesn't revisit old messages or stalk their social media. She doesn't keep a door cracked for maybe one day. Her no is final. Her departure is real, because she knows that partial exits only lead to prolonged pain. She's not cold. She's not bitter. She's clear on what she deserves, clear on what she refuses to tolerate, clear on the life she's creating and who no longer fits in it. When she walks away, she doesn't just leave behind a situation. She reclaims her power. She reclaims her time, her energy, her dignity. And she doesn't wait for applause. Her reward is internal. It's the peace she feels when she's no longer questioning her value. It's the freedom she finds when she's no longer stuck trying to fix something that was never hers to fix. Because the high-value woman understands this. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to walk away. Quietly, permanently, and completely in love with yourself. You don't become a high-value woman by chance. You become her by choice, by rising every time you're pushed down, by refusing to let the pain of others rewrite your worth, by drawing lines where there used to be excuses, by protecting your peace like your life depends on it, because it does. You don't beg to be seen. You don't chase love that hurts. You don't tolerate disrespect just to keep the peace. You are the peace. You bring the value. You set the tone. Toxic people don't know what to do with a woman who doesn't flinch, who doesn't explain, who doesn't argue. They expect chaos, but you answer with calm. They seek reaction, but you respond with silence. They want access, but you've changed the locks. This isn't about arrogance. It's about alignment. You're done watering dead things. You're done teaching grown people how to treat you. You're done performing for love that can't recognize your brilliance. Let them call you difficult. Let them say you've changed. You have, and that's the point. You've evolved, you've awakened, and you no longer apologize for putting yourself first. So if you take nothing else away, take this. Never negotiate your value. Never explain your boundaries. Never shrink to make anyone else comfortable. You are not here to tolerate toxicity. You are here to rise, to lead, to walk in truth, and above all, to never forget who the hell you are. That is how a high-value woman handles toxic people. With clarity, with strength, and with an exit so clean, it echoes.